You know, it's true. I'm an absolute genius. Check that out. I want to oscillate it backwards and forwards across the reef structure itself, thus making the most of that surging wave of water. We're going to take this Carlson surge device nozzle and hopefully make it sweep backwards and forwards across the tank with a little help from a microwave motor. And I'm guessing not a lot of help from bird brain. The Carlson surge device, originally brought to the hobby by Bruce Carlson of the Waikiki Aquarium in the 1980s, is simply put an elevated barrel or tank, in my case, hang on, that tank up there, that's a 200 litre barrel or 50 gallons, and that tank or barrel is continuously fed water from either the sump or the display tank. Once the water level contained within that barrel reaches a certain level, a siphon is created within the plumbing itself, which discharges its entire contents very, very quickly into the aquarium, thus creating a surging wave. And the SeaSwirl, brought to us by Aquarium Currents in 1998, is an oscillating water motion device aimed to mechanically or motorized send in an arc the return nozzle from your sump pump, I guess, in a sweeping motion backwards and forwards across the aquarium, thus creating some random water movement. But until now, I do not believe that anyone has tried to combine the outflow from a Carlson surge device with the randomness of an ocean's SeaSwirl. My part of this SeaSwirl is going to be a bit different to the original. I'm going to house the motor and the arm inside of a box which will sit on the rim of my tank, and the arm will cantilever out across to attach to the swiveling plumbing piece, as opposed to the original SeaSwirl where it was all contained within the box together. She's not pretty, but she's going to be inside a box, so it doesn't really matter. All I've done is taken that piece of timber, recessed it down with a good old hole saw, chiseled it out and screwed the motor down in place, allowing enough room for that electrical cable to pass over the motor freely. I'll drill a little hole, I will notch out here for the cables to go through. I have to put some insulation over the cables, and now I'm just getting a handle on where this arm is going to have to pass through the wall of this protective box, so I can cut out a portion of the box. Hopefully not cut out too much. I'm thinking I need to cut out just this section here. Now obviously if you've got a 3D printer at home, you're going to be able to do a much better job, like a couple of other people have shown me some of their designs, or if you want to do a Google search for DIY SeaSwirls. But let's face it, what's inside the box doesn't matter, it's the action that counts. There's not a lot I need to cut out, it's just from here to here. And that's good because I want to try and minimise the amount of potential for splash to get inside the box and damage the motor. I was trying to find a way of making PVC parts swivel. And if you think about it, if you go and jam a piece of pipe into another piece of PVC plumbing, it's meant to stay fixed. And of course you're meant to glue it as well to make it stay fixed. And that doesn't swivel very well. So I went down to what is available locally at the hardware store to see what would swivel. And I came up with what's called a barrel union, I think you would say. Usually a barrel union has two halves to it and a black O-ring between, and that black O-ring, once the barrel union is done up, creates the tight seal that you can take apart later. Now, two things. Number one, I have jammed that half of the 40mm 1.5" barrel union inside this 2" elbow. No glue, just a lot of force. Now, the other thing I've done is remove the black rubber O-ring, because I don't want it to nip up to a seal. What happens when you screw the other half of the nut on? That still turns freely. Now I hear you say, yes, but water could possibly leak outside of here and maybe over the top edge there. Yeah, sure, it probably could. But in my situation, this is going to be hanging over the aquarium, so if it does dribble down a bit, it's going to dribble down in the aquarium. And of course, I haven't got it located inside the box. That can now spin. Like I said, it leaks in the aquarium. That can now spin. But how am I going to make it spin? This PVC part here is a PVC standoff saddle for a 40mm pipe aimed to secure PVC piping off a wall. This is going to be used as a means of fixing the arm connecting the PVC pipe to the rotating motor or oscillating motor. But rather than fixing it to the downpipe, I guess you'd say as such, I find from experience I like to mess around a fair bit with the outflow of these surge devices, the depth. I just know I'm going to mess around, and if I glue that in place there, I'm going to be stuck. So instead what I'm going to do is fix it up onto the output of the barrel union just there, and that will still cause it to rotate. Alright, what I'm finding is that when the surge device is discharging, number one, because that rubber O-ring is not inside the barrel union, I'm getting a lot more water coming out this nut and also underneath the nut than what I anticipated. I anticipated it was going to happen, that's the reason why it's suspended over the tank, but I didn't think there'd be as much coming up through the gap between the nut and the pipe as what there is. The other thing is that it's not sliding as freely as I would like. Right, in my first attempt, the original plastic, we'll call it a table from the microwave, was peeled. The super glue that I used to attach it to the stem of the microwave motor peeled free with the action of the arm trying to turn it. So I'm going to use a little bit of epoxy. I don't want the epoxy to dribble down onto the warm motor and fix the stem in a permanent position and not be able to turn. So I'm going to pop this in place where I can, give a bit of a wobble, make sure there's no air bubbles in place, pop a weight on top so it glues. You can see it's got a bit of a cantilever there, so I want to glue pretty level, so a bit of a weight on top. We'll start him up. That way any tiny bit of glue that comes out as the epoxy sets won't fix the engine in one spot or the motor in one spot and stop the turning. I need to find a way to seal the thread area where this nut locks up onto the elbow, and also this area underneath the nut, which is the pivot area for the pipe coming down. To explain, this is some old barrel unions I've got. My concept was, if you tighten up a barrel union all the way, it's not going to pivot. That's the whole point. It's meant to be sealed, but I'm trying to work it so it's not tightened all the way up to allow that to rotate and pivot inside. But of course, when it's not done up tight, I get water spraying out the top and I'm getting water coming out the bottom. Inox MX6 synthetic grease, which does say on the back it's for potable water usage, which is drinking water. It's non-toxic, non-staining, so I thought I might be able to use that to lubricate. And initially I thought if I use this rubber gasket and push it hard into here, then just nip the thread on enough, like that. Oh. Initially I thought that was going to be too thick and I wasn't going to get enough of a bite with the threads. It's a rubber gasket from a bulkhead fitting, and I was just going to use some scissors and look to trim it down to size. But I'm wondering if that might work. Let's just do an experiment. I'll take that one out, if I can get it out. And I will cut up this bulkhead fitting gasket so that it fits. These curved scissors are pretty handy. These are everything. I use these for fishing, I use these for pruning plants in my freshwater aquarium. It'll give more thread for the nut to do up, or the nut to do up on the male component of the barrel union. Bubba! That's Reggie's nickname. I don't know why it's called Bubba. He should be called Dick. Anyway. Let's still turn. Let's lube up the bejesus out of this. Might be something that needs to be done on an ongoing basis. It's pretty thick synthetic grease, this stuff, so I want a fair bit there. Because that's going to act as a point that the two fittings will slide on. I think I might put a couple of wraps of thread tape around that part, the male thread, which is housed up in the elbow, just so I don't have to do the nut up really tight. If I go to do it up really tight, then it's going to impair the ability of that to turn. That still spins, and that's pretty tight. I mean, the grey's not particularly attractive. Still spins. I obviously want to get this nut done up as much as possible on this thread to get as much chance of it sealing and stopping the water from spraying out the top here, but still maintaining good movement of this lower portion. This is the kind of thing you just don't get when you buy a wave maker or a pump in a box these days. This is the way we used to do things a good 25 years ago. Everything was just nutted out. Never worked perfectly, I might add, but it was a lot of fun. I guess these days the hobby's just a bit different. You need to be an IT professional to figure out the equipment and the apps, and less so an amateur mad scientist or engineer. Point, yeah, that's a bit stiff, so I'm going to back off a bit So I've got momentum there still. Beautiful. I'm going to put the lower section of the outlet on so it can move, or so it's free, I should say. Bit of plastic over this box so I don't get water splashing in if that does leak, and we will test and see if the Carlson surge device is reasonably water tight. When the sump level goes down, we know the barrel's filling up. So this surge device discharges about every 1.5 minutes. You'll start to see the effect when some bubbles start to appear. Now, I've done a whole video on how to build a Carlson surge device. It looks a bit like this, and if you want to learn how to do one, I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. You know, one of those end screen thumbnail kind of things. Uh-oh, we've got some leaks. Let's have a look. Right, so the surge is beginning. We've got water coming out of the thread. How is that happening? I know where it's happening. Up. And now it's pissing out of there. So I know how that's coming, because that's just a press fit. I've just press fit the barrel union up inside the elbow. And so it's coming down from between the elbow and the male component of the barrel union. There's no glue in there because it's not meant to be glued. Righto, so to explain what I did previously, a 50mm elbow and the male part of this old barrel union, yeah? So that's the way it's situated on my surge device, and it can swivel. But what I did, I just press fit. This one seems to be a lot looser. It's clearly different brands of PVC fittings, but I press fit, and it took a fair bit of trouble to get that up into there, and I thought that that would be sufficient. But what I think is happening is because this is grooved, the water is coming down and passing between the grooves and spurting out around it. Tap that down, and lo and behold, ta-da! Now I can bog and glue that thing in properly. And to do that, I've got this Cromlin waterproofing polyurethane sealer adhesive. Sticks really well to PVC. Brilliant. Off of the PVC. I guess I should probably do it inside that elbow as well, which will mean I'm going to get PVC dust inside of the tank. But hey, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Reggie's a almost 4-year-old red-tailed black cockatoo, and he's over here in his aviary, which is where he spends his day when I'm coming and going in the shed here, in my packing shed, just so that he's safe. And then every evening I pull this bit of bird netting across the entrance to my shed like that, and shut that door just over there, and that allows him the free rein of flying around the entire shed. And he goes from that perch up there to that perch up there, and generally becomes a handful. And every afternoon when he thinks it's about time for him to come out, he starts to carry on like a dick. Cures pretty quickly. I'm glad I got this done now, because tomorrow this will be ready to rock and roll. Okay, so we've got some success here. I've reattached the locking nut underneath with the the plastic gasket inside and more grease. You can see the surge device is going, and there is no leaking coming from up here. So that polyurethane glue has done the job. All I've got to do now is find out if this motor will turn it whilst it's running. I really hope this works. Take the lid off. There we go. Pass this rod through the hole and onto the top of the turntable. I just have to do this bolt up. Double glued down, arm hooked up. I think what I can do is turn him on and just make sure the mechanism's working properly. You can see I've fixed a piece of angle aluminium underneath there to give that a good purchase, so there's no chance the box is going to rock, because last time the pressure coming backwards from this motor pushed this box in a rocking motion because it was just sitting on the edge, and also peeled the turntable off the stem of the motor. Let's turn him on. It's going to do about a 45-degree sweep, which is all I need, because I don't really want it turning all the way to 90 and hitting this front glass and then all the way back to that 90, well that's a 180, and hitting that wall. I really just need it to go backwards and forwards like this, just to hit and sweep across the coral on the far side there. And again, the reason why I glued this PVC bracket to the underside of the barrel union, the female part of the barrel union, so as I can actually swap out the downpipe and the nozzles, I guess you'd say, and experiment with that. If I glued this to the pipe there, I'd be stuck with that pipe. I did come up with a bit of a support mechanism thanks to a conversation with a good friend, and my concern was that I'd get a bit of wobble from the surge device, and I felt like I needed to support it back to the glass, and so we come up with this bit of a contraption. It's, let's just say it's a bit raw, but I can fine tune this later. It's simply the same type of PVC saddle where I've straightened off the edges, straightened off the, what do you call them, the legs, pushed it inside a piece of 20mm PVC which goes to a T, a couple of suction caps, and that's just sitting in there. And the reason being it's just sitting there is because if it's done up really tight, it will grip the pipe and stop it from turning. I don't want that. I want it to be supportive to take the wobble out, but still allow the pipe to turn within. So that's my support mechanism to try and stop a bit of the wobble, if there is wobble. Let's pop that up in place like that, and then that can be suction capped to the wall of the aquarium, and I can move this up and down. Let's have a closer look for you. So there's my support. See it just down there, and I can move that up and down, go all the way up here if I feel like it needs the support higher up, but I feel like it's probably going to need that little bit of guidance lower down. You can see a slight, ever so slight wobble. Surge hasn't discharged yet. That's just a bit of the air purging out of the system whilst the barrel up there is being filled up from the pump. So I have brought the nozzle up fairly close to the surface. You can see it's just below the water. I'm thinking that the closer it is to the surface, the less resistance there is in terms of the, I don't know, that the water body itself gives, and it will make it easier on the arm and the motor to keep the turning mechanism running. Let's see. Surge is beginning. There it goes. Will it keep turning? Please keep turning. Yeah, it's still coming this way. And into the corner. And it's going to come back across. Please, 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 please. Going down that way. It is. I think it's working. It's working. The air's starting to turn. And there we go. Now the surge is beginning and it's still turning. It's still turning, which means, oh, that's great. It's not jamming. It's going to come back towards us again. Here it comes. Beautiful. Not getting any leaks. Now, although I like to think of myself as a bit of a mad scientist in the old aquarium fish shed here, or let's face it, a bloody genius, I'm not. I've simply rehashed some research on SeaSwirl, sea sweeps, whatever it might be, from YouTube, Google, and also a little bit of help from some of you out there. Franklin, thank you for your advice particularly, I appreciate it. The reason for me putting these videos up is to give you some inspiration. So have some inspiration, have a crack with your own aquariums, do some DIY, see what you can come up with. This is the Australian Aquarist, over and out.